Hi everybody, this is my thought for the day. So recently I've been reading this book by Nicola Neal called Journey into Love. And it's her story of God calling her to Uganda to work in Kampala in the slums. But actually, probably more than anything, it's actually her story about her own relationship with God and, as the title says, journeying into his love. I have been really inspired by the book so far, and there's this little section that I just wanted to read to you, which goes like this. Our times with Jesus in the secret place are meant to be exciting, adventurous, and multi-sensory experiences. And she goes on to say, I am more and more convinced that as believers, we have really only scratched the surface of what it means to walk in a love relationship, true intimacy with him. There is so much more just waiting to be discovered and explored. He's looking for those willing to pay the price, accept the challenge, and journey into the depths of knowing Jesus Christ. You know, I think there is a hunger inside of all of us to know God in greater intimacy and to experience his presence more and more. I think it's a healthy desire. I mean, if you read the Bible right from the beginning, right from the Garden of Eden to the end, the whole thing has been about relationship with God and God restoring us back to that closeness with him. So it was never meant to be kind of an added bonus to our walk with God. It was always meant to be at the heart of it. But I think there are things that really knock out that desire from us when we kind of walk as Christians in our lives. For me personally, one of the things that I've heard a lot, and I do see the logic in this, is that it has stepped people into slightly dodgy theology, when we get kind of really experience focused, and you can end up thinking that people who experience God on a regular basis must be really good Christians, and people who don't have a really bad relationship with God. And that's just not true. And the Bible doesn't support that in either direction. But secondly, I also think that even though we've got this hunger to know God more intimately, we almost get this idea that not to aim so high, like, we can experience God in conferences or in corporate settings sometimes, but that's not meant to be part of our everyday life. And also, I think, certainly from a personal point of view, when I've set time aside to really pursue God for whatever reason, I've often hit very common barriers, which are to be really distracted. So I can go and set maybe a day or half a day aside to be with God, but end up my mind wandering into a million different things, getting distracted by stuff. Life kicks off and I've got other things to end up doing and whatever else happens. And Nicola Neal, actually, in her book, she does talk about more about kind of how she dealt with the distractions that are so common to all of us. And she talked about being really proactive in always disciplining herself to get her focus back onto God. And she did that personally by saying the word Jesus, and not saying this in a kind of formulaic way, but almost a way to help her refocus her gaze on him. So, she goes to be with God, she starts thinking about a million things she's got to do, and then she realizes she's doing that and she just says the word Jesus, refocuses on him again. And it could be seconds later, her attention goes again and she has to say the word Jesus again. But, and she said that at the beginning, she did have to do that a lot. Like every minute, she'd have to repeat the name Jesus, Jesus, Jesus to get her gaze back on him again. But I guess the big difference with her than me has been she didn't give up. She persisted. She kept taking and turning her gaze back to Jesus. And she would do that day after day after day after day until it became so much easier. And instead of having to say it every minute, it became a lot less. And in that time of turning her gaze onto Jesus, turning a focus onto him, she started to experience the presence of God more tangibly and in a much realer way. And that for me is kind of the goal, if you like, to know that in more intimate ways, to know God in more intimate ways like that. And one thing she says in her book, which I just love, later on in the chapter is, I I didn't realize it at the time, but spending that amount of time each day saturated in his love and presence was changing me. Things that I'd previously seen as so important began to seem ridiculous and worthless. Things that had terrified me before began to hold no power over me anymore. I no longer cared what people thought about me, how they would see me, or what they might say about me. Instead, I became obsessed with Jesus. I was concerned about how Jesus saw me, what Jesus thought about me, what Jesus had to say about me. It was good. I mean, that to me is just dream come true. The thought that you're experiencing the presence of God, but the reality that in that place of experiencing him and knowing his love more and more, that is a place where you get changed. And she was being changed. And there's so many things in my life that I've been wanting for ages to change, fears I wanted to get over, and just preoccupations that I just wanted to just not have anymore. And this kind of reminded me that the place it changes isn't in my hard work and striving, but in the presence of God. That's where we get to change. And she was changing in the presence of God. And I just love that. So I guess my thought for the day is me trying to say, dare to dream again. Dare to dream that your relationship with God can be this incredibly stimulating, exciting, like real experiential thing. It can be that. It's meant to be that. And also the encouragement, which I'm very much saying to myself, of let's not quit at that place of distraction. Let's keep trying. And don't limit ourselves to kind of just when we have to set aside time to be with God. But we can practice the presence of God when washing up, when doing our jobs, when being around other people, watching the TV. There is never a place where we can't practice his presence and turn our attention to him. And I think the more and more we do that, the more we'll experience his presence and his love in our lives and be changed by that. I hope that may be encouraging. And I do recommend the book. So if you get a chance, do grab a copy. Have a great day.